Basketball legend and more importantly, a great man of character, John Thompson, passes away today at age 78. We'll get into his life and his achievements on the court and more importantly, off the court. Is it possible for the Big Ten to actually still schedule a fall football season in 2020? They're thinking about starting their season on Thanksgiving Day, if you can believe that. I've definitely got some opinions when it comes to that story. And also, this year is going to be odd in college football all the way around, but I've got the 5 biggest games that you can't afford to miss. And congratulations, by the way, to all of you out there. You have found the show that helps you be smarter than your friends when it comes to sports. Start it.
You're tuned in to the hottest sports analysis of the week with your hosts Ron Dolbeck and Chris Roberts. And now, here's the first round.
A big Monday night happy week. Happy college football starting to all of our 700 plus subscribers. We've actually gone up over 203 subscribers in the last 2 weeks. We want to thank each of you out there for joining us here in the first round. And we've got actually a really cool shout out coming up of some people that we ran into this weekend. We were out about town. So much stuff going on in the world of sports. I'm joined here, as I always am, by my two co-hosts, Joe Monroe and Chris Roberts. Gentlemen, I don't care who goes first. What's the most exciting thing you saw in the world of sports this past weekend?
It's on you, man.
That's on me. Oh, the most interesting thing I saw this weekend was when the Yankees and the Mets played.
Here we go.
They were up 7-2. The Mets were, and they blew it, and the Yankees won 8-7 by a wild pitch walk-off.
Wasn't that they? I know they were up by a ton, and they came back and scored like 7 runs in the bottom of the 8th.
They won 8-7.
That was a pretty good story. You know what? I turned it off about the 4th inning because it was a gasser. So I don't need to spend any part of my weekend watching a grenade game.
Me was actually watching Luka Doncic put up 38 points against the Clippers, even though they lost. I mean, this guy is showing you that he is one of the top 5 players in the league right now.
I couldn't agree more. I think he is. He's right there on the cusp. And did you see how ESPN did a whole special just doing his shots and Larry Bird? It was like a 3 or 4 minute thing where they were comparing him to Larry Bird with his passing. And somebody on the set doesn't think Larry Bird's a good player, but you and I know better than that.
Exactly.
So, anyway, let's get to all the things going on in the world of sports over the weekend and get you up to date. It's got to start in one place. That's the NBA playoffs. How about Jamal Murray goes absolutely prison rules on Utah, scoring 50 points in a do-or-die Game 6. Denver gets it done, 119-107. Tuesday night, the greatest thing you can hear in sports, Game 7 on TNT, 8:30. Check it out. I will be watching, and so will the rest of the crew. How about my Celtics doing a river dance all over the Raptors on Sunday, 119-94. Celtics only had 6 players in double-digit scoring. That's all. I got one for you. The biggest reason why they won that game, how about Pascal Siakam? 34 minutes, had 13 points, was negative and 20-point differential. He needs to donate his check to charity. That's a joke. Lakers and Clippers both close out their first-round series. Lakers get OKC or Houston. That's a tight series, although Houston has looked really good over the weekend. I still think it could be tight. Clippers are going to get the winner in that Game 7 between Denver and Utah. Heat and Bucks. Game 1 tonight on TNT. I think that's going to be a tight series. I think the Bucks get it done in 6 or 7. The Heat are better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. I think it's going to be a tight contest. College football. Auburn cancels 2 practices after they say that 16 players are concerned on a concern list that they have. 9 of them tested positive for COVID. 7 of them are in a high-risk category. That's got to hurt their practice time, especially being limited right now. And we have college football coming up in a big way in about 10 days. How about LSU standout wide receiver Jamal Chase opting out of the 2020 football season, getting ready for the NFL? He says he wants to prepare and be in physical and mental shape, and he's skipping out on his brothers at LSU. You win a championship, now you look for a paycheck. Notre Dame comes out today and says it will only sell 16,000 tickets to each home game. Also, no tailgating will be allowed. Can they find 16,000 fans in Indiana that are super excited about mediocre football? I don't know. I'll get into that. tailgating, touchdowns, and top hats. Actually, college football has already started as of Saturday night. Central Arkansas beats the Austin P Governors 24-17. We're waiting for the real college football season to start in about 2 weeks. Major League Baseball news, trade deadline today. How about the San Diego Padres making monster moves to bring in Mitch Moreland from the Boston Red Sox? And today they acquire right-hander from the Indians, Mike Clevenger. I think this is a huge pickup. In 22 innings so far this year, Clevenger's ERA is 3.18. He has a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. I love those numbers. And the Padres are only 4 games behind the Dodgers. I think they want to make a push to the playoffs. Speaking of the Dodgers, they are up on San Diego in the NL West. They set a National League record for most home runs in 1 month at 57, led by Mookie Betts, who had 11 in August. Unbelievable. Speaking of teams leading their division, anybody notice that the Tampa Bay Rays, hold on, is this microphone working? The Tampa Bay Rays lead the AL East. Not my Red Sox, not the Yankees, but the Rays are up 3.5 games on the Evil Empire. Tampa is 24-11, set to start a 3-game series tonight at Yankee Stadium and extend that lead. NFL news, once promising Jags running back Leonard Fournette cut today by Jacksonville after 3 stressful years. And I think you've got to blame the relationship with Tom Coughlin and Leonard Fournette. I know Tom Coughlin got fired in December, but that relationship was so toxic, and some of the stuff that Leonard Fournette has done in his first 3 years in the NFL is inexcusable, even on a knucklehead level. But after he gets cut, head coach of the Jaguars, Doug Marrone, comes out and says, look, we called every team in the league to try and facilitate a trade with this guy. Nobody wanted him. Teams that I think should be interested in him include Tampa Bay, the Rams, Washington, and how about my New England Patriots? I think he'd be a good fit with any of them. Chargers Pro Bowl safety Derwin James torn his meniscus, could be out. Yahoo Sports says a significant amount of time. This isn't a 2-week injury, so now they need a safety. And when asked about this, head coach Anthony Lynn says the Chargers have, quote, no interest in safety Earl Thomas, who was cut last week by the Baltimore Ravens, a future Pro Bowler there. But when you act up, you get cut. So we see that happening with Leonard Fournette, and we see that happening with Earl Thomas. So much stuff going on in the world of sports today. We are doing our SEC breakdown. This is a big college football show for us today. We're going to break down who we like in the SEC East. Thursday, you are not going to want to miss our show. It's going to be awesome. 5-time boxing world champion and one of the best follows, I think, on Twitter, Mia St. James. We're going to be talking about her fight to raise awareness for mental illness. Want to redirect you guys to her site. Check her out on Twitter, Mia St. John. We're going to be getting into some stuff that I think is really important in this time of society. And also, we're going to have our SEC West breakdown. Chris, did I miss anything?
No, you did. I'm just ready for some college football.
I'm ready for some college football, absolutely. Before we get started on college football, we went over 700 subscribers. We went up another 100 subscribers just in the last 5 days. It's good to be back on the air. All our numbers are going in the right direction. First of all, before we shine the light on ourselves, we want to thank all of our subscribers out there. Thank you so much. It means a lot to us. We put a lot of effort into the show. We get 2 hours to put something good in your eyes and ears every single week. And we want to thank all of you for joining us here in the first round, including a really cool couple that we met out in town at the stadium this week, Dalton and Jamie from Pensacola. I told you and promised you we would give you a shout out. Thank you guys so much for becoming our 701st and 702nd subscribers. That's so awesome. Now, getting back to business, college football is on the top of my list. I was going to talk a little NBA, but I think I've already covered it in the show as much as I want to. I really have been fiending, waiting, anticipating college football starting, and we kind of got a taste of it on Saturday. Right. I've actually been watching high school football, if you can believe that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, some of those high school football games, they're impressive. I mean, you see how these kids are out here actually running plays and looking like pre-college football players. And some of these guys are huge. You see some of these offensive linemen. Man, I just looked at this quarterback from Lafayette today. This guy was like my size, and I'm like, whoa, this guy's in high school? Are you serious?
My size, 6'3".
Like 6'3", like this guy's a big guy. Like,
245 pounds of oak.
Yes, I mean
Carved oak.
Yes, this guy's looking like a baby Tebow out here, man.
Yeah. You know, here's the thing that I've found about high school football now that it's back in circulation a little more is that you see the potential in the 5- and 4-star guys.
Right.
But then you also see guys that don't have any business being on the same field as them. So it's like you're either hitting a home run or you just struck out with your mom's life on the line on national TV. I mean, it's that dispersion. We don't get that in college football. Certainly there's not that kind of separation in the NFL.
Right.
But I have been so waiting for college football to start. We had that game Saturday, which was, barely watchable. The only reason I, suffered through as much of it as I did was I hadn't seen football in so long, and it's a real game, and it was live, and I'm just kind of getting the optics of getting back in the swing of it. And I'm checking out the camera angles. They're very low camera angles. No crowd shots at all. It was pretty funny. But we have games Saturday. 9 games that count from real schools. The biggest one out there, I think, is Middle Tennessee, which I can't believe I'm actually saying this. I mean, is this week 1 in college football? And the biggest game out there, or one of them, is Middle Tennessee against Army.
Okay, I'm looking to see what Army's going to do. Middle Tennessee.
I think you covered it all.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
So believe it or not, another game I'm actually kind of looking forward to is last year, 8-5, Arkansas State goes on the road to Mike Norvell-less Memphis. Memphis at home, and they just had their top running back, a short speedster, Kenneth Gainwell, almost 1,500 yards last season, 13 touchdowns. He just opted out. So I think this game becomes a lot more even. Arkansas State wasn't a joke at 8-5 last year. They were actually 33rd in the country in overall offense. So that's a game that I'm kind of looking forward to. And then there's a bunch of directional schools playing each other. And then Monday night, we usually get like USC against Va Tech or Alabama against Florida State.
Right.
And then in the year of COVID, who do we got? Do you know who's playing?
No, who?
We've got BYU against Navy. How out of those? I mean, how do you got to get yourself psyched up for these games, Chris? This is just this week, though.
This week, yeah. I mean, it kind of eases you into it.
This is just the waitress coming out saying, "Can I get you guys some drinks?" You started with drinks. We're not ordering yet. I just need a Mai Tai or a Cosmo, or better yet, Limoncello, or an Alabama Slammer, or beer.
Yeah, just get me a beer right now.
Joe, any of these wet your whistle so far this weekend? You got BYU and Navy, Middle Tennessee State, Army.
Just brought up BYU versus Navy.
Talk to me. Why?
I mean, I've watched Navy for the past few years, and I really like their offense.
Head coach Ken Niumatalolo.
He's still there, yeah.
I think he's in his 12th or 13th year. Out of all the coaches from the service schools and directional schools.
Navy was ranked last year for a little bit, weren't they?
Navy's been ranked several times. He's gotten him into double-digit wins several times. He's not a joke when it comes to coach. And you're talking about a place that it is harder to put a camel through the eye of a needle than to recruit to schools like Stanford, the service academies, especially Navy and Air Force.
Yeah.
Only props to those guys. But I told you that I would have a list of the biggest games that we could look forward to in general in college football, and I've got it right here. Next week, it starts getting better because Notre Dame gets into action, Clemson, Texas, and Oklahoma. Week 4, September 25th, SEC starts rolling, and then if the Big Ten has its way, they're going to reverse position on everything, and they're going to start their season on Thanksgiving, which I'm going to get into later in the show, but that's an absolute joke. Let's start talking about some of the big games that we've got circled on the calendar a little bit farther out from this weekend, which I am excited about. How about October 30th, Auburn at Georgia. Auburn, 27th best overall defense last year. My big question is, what am I getting with Bo Nix? And are they going to be able to rebuild that defensive line? I think this is going to be a monster game. I've got it circled already.
Well, I mean, it's going to be interesting seeing how Bo Nix is able to actually, come in with a different offensive coordinator, being that Kenny Dillingham has left and, has transitioned to Florida State as an offensive coordinator. So I'm definitely want to see how Bo Nix is able to actually wedge with his new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Chris, I'm really interested to see Bo Nix in his second year go against Jamie Newman, who actually just transferred from Wake Forest, to see, because everybody's high on Jamie Newman. So I'm just curious to know how good he will be. I mean, he had, 26 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last year? That was in the ACC.
Right, that was with Wake Forest. And I don't know how impressed I should be with that. I think he's definitely a step up from Jake Fromm, who I said last year was consistent and a good manager, but not explosive. Yeah. The fact that they were 66th in the country, Georgia, last year in offense, I mean, I think he's going to have a cup of coffee at Buffalo and a couple other places in the NFL, and then that's going to be into that story.
Oh, Fromm?
Yeah, Jake Fromm.
Didn't Calvin Ridley, his brother Ryan Ridley, didn't he just opt out of the season? I'm pretty sure he did.
You need to be 100% when you make an accusation like that, Chief.
Yeah.
All right, how about October 10th? Who is ready for Texas, Oklahoma? The Red River rivalry. They're only going to have about 15,000 people there, so you're going to have 7,500 in Burnt Orange and 7,500. And my big concern, if I'm going to talk about, I don't want to go too deep into these, but my main concern with that game is what am I getting with the Texas defense, especially their secondary. Their secondary last year was terrible. Offensively, 14th best in the country last year. Last year, 127th against the pass. You want to talk about missing in action? 97th best defense overall. How much heat has Tom Herman got on him to get that defense fixed against an Oklahoma team who for the fourth year in a row is looking for what? Who's their starting quarterback going to be? It might be redshirt sophomore Tanner Mordecai or redshirt freshman Spencer Rattler. What a name for – isn't that – like that is the Friday Night Lights name, right. Spencer Rattler.
He's going to be their starter this year, Spencer Rattler.
He might be. Right now he's number 2 on the Oklahoma depth chart, but I think that's a huge game, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge game. I think this game right here has implications of whether Tom Herman will actually be back next year. I think if Tom Herman actually loses this game again, I think this is it for him. I think he's out of there after this year.
He's had enough time. It's a blue chip organization. Yeah. You're supposed to be able to recruit like mad when you're coaching at Texas. I don't know. They played Oklahoma tough last year, but last year was like the CeeDee Lamb show. I mean, you want to talk about going prison rules on somebody. CeeDee Lamb destroyed their whole secondary, and they had plenty other weapons on offense. But, I think this is going to be a big game. I think you hit it right on the head there when you said this is the Tom Herman game. This is your resume to keep you employed or not. Then we go to October 17th. I don't feel bad for Georgia at all. Georgia's got Auburn, Alabama, and Florida in a 3-week stint to open up the season, and I don't shed a tear at all. October 17th, they got to go on the road to Tuscaloosa. Hello! How about Alabama, man? I have full confidence in Mac Jones. I love their running back, Najee Harris. I think he's a tough guy. He doesn't fumble. He goes for those yards after contact. I love that. And how about I think they're Bama's MVP this year, wide receiver Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy reminds me of Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
Or Tariq Hill. I mean, just a speedster on the outside. Burned LSU, I think, for 2 punt run backs last year in their game.
Yeah.
I think he's a superstar. That is a monster game. October 17th.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great game. I actually think from what I've been looking at as far as the stats or whatnot, Mac Jones actually looks really, really good going into this season. I'm looking at the offseason tapes and whatnot. So I think this is going to be a big year for Mac Jones and definitely going to be a big year for Jalen Waddle as well in this game.
Mac Jones, yeah, I'm really high on Mac Jones, actually. I mean, he was pretty good down the stretch last year, so it's curious to see what he'll do this year, honestly, with no offense all to himself. I mean, Tua was hurt for a good amount of time last year with nursing that ankle injury, so we'll see what Mac Jones does with the team on his back.
It's just like every other year. Alabama loses like half their roster, an offensive coordinator.
And the next guy just steps in.
And the next guy steps in, and they have some monster recruiting season, and then they go and win 11 games and blow out Michigan or whoever comes down to play them, in their bowl game. I mean, they're obviously still the class of the SEC. I think they are. Now, last year, that was a tough loss at home to LSU. Last year, LSU, all props to them, SEC champs, national champs. they had their number. But when you look over the past 15 years,
Alabama's been.
it's just Alabama and then everybody else. The game of the year, as far as I'm concerned, pre-playoff, has got to be November 7th in Jacksonville. Georgia comes calling to Florida to play my mighty Florida Gators. I am so excited about this game. I have been smack talking on Twitter to Georgia fans almost nonstop. Here's the concerns I have. Well, I don't want to really get too much into it. I just think it's going to be a monster game that we need to look out for. I think it's going to settle the dust between who's going to win the SEC East.
Oh, most definitely.
And I think it's going to be an exciting game. And as a fan, the fever pitch for this game, in the weirdest year that you could, it seems higher than ever. Am I wrong, Chris?
Oh, no, you're not wrong. I mean, if you're a Florida fan, this is the year for Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen, I mean, you basically have the check boxes in your favor. I mean, you have decent wide receivers, you have decent running backs, you have an experienced quarterback coming in. Your defense is pretty good. So I mean, you check off all the boxes for you to beat Georgia this year. If you don't do it, if I'm a Florida fan, I'm kind of upset.
Chris, it's never our defense. It's always our offense that's the problem. We haven't had a quarterback now. I mean, we have Trask now, but our defense has always been good. It's been solid.
Monster secondary this year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
can we rebuild the defensive line? Because we lose Zanuga, we lose Jonathan Grenier.
We lost Polite.
Right, and we lost him. And so I'm concerned about the secondary. I have no concerns with.
No.
I don't want to get too much into it because we're going to talk about it a little bit later when we break down our SEC East. But one thing I'm looking out for is the running game of Florida. They've got to get that going with LaMichael Pirine going to the NFL, and also the running game for Georgia because Swift gets drafted, he's gone, and was it Zamir White? He's number one on their depth chart right now. I think those are two big question marks. Yeah. Can't be fine in that game though.
Right.
This is for all the marbles. Other monster games that I am looking out for. How about October 14th? Alabama goes to Death Valley. You know LSU wants that to be a night game. You do. They want that to be a night game. Alabama, LSU, I think this is another monster game that you absolutely have to have circled right now on the calendar.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to see that game, especially with players opting out this year. So I definitely want to see what LSU actually has on the offense from last year that's going to be able to carry on to beat Alabama this year.
Got to take a step down, though, right?
Yeah.
They lost so much.
Exactly.
And then they lose Jamar Chase today. He's opting out. So there's another premier wide receiver not out there for them.
Right. So I'm definitely want to see what Coach O has up his sleeve this year.
How about November 7th? I don't consider this a conference game, which is the ones that I like. It's going to be two ranked teams from – I'm not saying it's a conference game. I'm looking at it as a non-conference game. How about Clemson, Travis?
Yeah.
They're going to Notre Dame to play the Fighting Irish.
Yeah.
I think this is another monster game that I wish we could watch this weekend. And I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a tight game. As much smack talk as I do concerning Notre Dame. Notre Dame does get up for teams, and they will play to the level of their teams. And I hope Brian Kelly has them ready. I don't, right now, just looking at it, I'd have to pick Clemson going into it. But I think this is going to be a monster game, especially when you don't have two major conferences and you have minor conferences, Ivy League and Conference USA or some other conferences that aren't going to be playing. It's really hard to find two teams that are ranked that are going to be matching up throughout the season before we get to the bowl season. This is one of them, and I can't wait to see it.
No, I can't wait to see it either. I mean, you have Clemson that still has that three-headed monster with Justin Ross, Travis Etienne, and Trevor Lawrence. So, I mean, the fact that you have these three guys still there on that Clemson offense is going to make for a very interesting game.
I'm just interested to see what Ian Book's going to do. I mean, they've been so high on him these past 2 years, but just curious to see if he will be there, if he's going to be consistent, from the past. From last year, actually, sorry. So we'll see.
He doesn't check all the boxes for me. He when I've seen him, he comes across as a manager of the game and like a B or B- guy on a college level.
The problem is Notre Dame is they don't play anybody.
They don't.
Everyone just every year Notre Dame. They get to the playoffs and boom, they get knocked out.
And you know what? Look at their schedule this year and tell me where they're going to have a loss. Because if it's Clemson, I'll get that.
Okay.
But then they're going to say, well, we were 10-1,
right,
and we deserve to get into the playoff.
No.
No.
No, you don't.
Stop scheduling, Sister Mary's School of the Blind
Right.
and Taco Tech. I don't want to see that.
No, I don't.
You get a bunch of kids out there on the other side of the football field that are putting Legos together, and you just run around and run up a score on them. That doesn't impress me. Okay, how about off the radar game that I'm looking forward to, and I'll tell you why. Matt Rule steps away to take the Carolina Panthers coaching position in the NFL and leaves behind, I think, a full cabinet at Baylor. Last year they were 11-3, going on the road to Iowa State. Now, I like Iowa State. They were 27th in total offense, so they can get the ball moving. And I think head coach Matt Campbell has done a great job in especially like the last 3 to 4 years there. They played the tough teams in their conference, the Big 12, very, very close. They very rarely get blown out. Now, I know we could talk about Camping World Bowl last year against Notre Dame, but he gets his team up and ready. They have a decent offense. I think Baylor takes a step back. Iowa State takes a step up. You've got two evenly matched, good quality teams. I'm actually looking forward to the matchup.
This definitely should be interesting. I mean, especially looking at Baylor. I mean, because you look at last year with Matt Rule being at Baylor. Baylor was like this hard-nosed team, and so you also have Iowa State, who also has that hard-nosed feel about them as well. And offensively, I mean, last year they were able to run the ball and actually put up some good points. So I'm actually interested in that game as well.
Hey, you don't walk into Ames and just get a victory.
No,
not anymore.
I'm not a huge Big 12 guy, but I think it'll be a close game just because it's the first game of the season, and we'll have to see what Matt Rule left behind with that Baylor offense. So it'll just be interesting to see how they'll do. Was it a night game or a day?
Oh, they haven't announced it yet. It's later on in the season, probably towards the end of the season, but it's still a matchup that intrigues me.
Yeah.
I mean, when 80% of the games in college football this season are going to be directional schools battling it out for the old bucket of spit, I mean, you got to take Baylor, Iowa State. It starts looking really good.
right.
So anyway, that was it. Those are the big games that I wanted to talk about. Moving on to thanking and our subscribers out there. We went over 700. We gained 193 subscribers in the last 2 weeks. That is incredible. We want to thank each and every one of them. There are ways you can be a part of the show. Email us here at thefirstraundrd@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at thefirstraund and then the number 1. We'll read your emails and comments. Last week we had some great emails and comments on the social justice issues out there. Hit the subscribe button. Tell your friends about the First Round. Help grow us to epic proportions. And when you do that, also hit the notification bell. You will be alerted every Monday night and Thursday when we put out new shows that are incredible every single week. How can you beat us? You can't. So, moving on to the Big Ten, which I'm a little hesitant to do because they're so schizophrenic. I mean, they remind me of like a hyped up ADD infected kid that's just like snorted 10 pounds of sugar and drank a Jolt and a Monster drink, and the mom says you can't go outside to play. So he's just running around the house inside, tearing everything up. He's sticking peanut butter in the VCR machine, which a lot of millennials aren't going to know about. He's taking non-erasable magic markers and Sharpies and doing all his math on the walls. This is the Big Ten.
Right.
They come out 3 or 4 months ago and say, we're in a holding position, but we think we're going to have a season. Mm-hmm. Then they want to make a big splash by coming out and saying before anybody else, oh, we're not playing this year. We're COVID, safety. No, it's we're not playing, lawsuits, fear of losing money. And then the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 and Conference USA all decide to play, and now the backpedaling starts. Now you've got 8 players from Nebraska saying that they want to sue to reinstate the season.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is crazy, but you got to understand too, Ron. The South loves its football. We can't go without football. But I mean, when you look at the Big 12. I think you said it's supposed to start around Thanksgiving. Why would you start on Thanksgiving Day of all days in the world? Why start on Thanksgiving? Do you know what goes on Thanksgiving Day?
It's a big football day. I can say that.
But you know who plays on Thanksgiving? Like
NFL teams play on Thanksgiving. What makes this story crazier is that Yahoo Sports comes out on Monday, today.
Right.
And says, Paul Christ, Ryan Day, James Franklin, Scott Frost are leading the charge to get the season started on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
On Thanksgiving. First of all, the first thing that pops into my head is like, how does this shape the bowl games that have financial tie-ins with conferences? So the Big Ten winner that's not eligible for the playoff is denoted to go to play the Pac-10 champion if they're not in the playoff in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
So how does that happen when you're 5 weeks away from that game?
It doesn't happen, but there's another slant as to why the Big Ten wants to kind of jump into this arena of actually playing football. Basically, what the NCAA did this year is basically waive the rule for red shirts. So basically, you as a red shirt, you can play all year long if you want, and that year won't count against you. So I mean, if I'm a player and I'm on one of those Big Ten teams, or if I'm a coach for one of those Big Ten teams, these other conferences basically have gotten a leg up on you because now you have these younger players still having another year of eligibility left from playing this year, and now they're going to be even better next year. So basically, the competition is already ahead of you.
Here's my next question: how does this shape the view of the playoffs? You're only going to have 4 or 5 games. Everybody else is going to be at 9 and 10 games. So you expect to get a qualifier in there from your conference with 4 or 5 games under the belt? I don't think so. Nope. I think my big question in this whole mess is Kevin Warren. Yeah. He's in charge of the Big Ten. He's got a little over a year's experience, and this is really bad optics. This is super bad. Like, this destroys recruiting. You can't make executive decisions and then go with it. You tried to make a big splash by beating everybody to the punch and saying, oh, no, we're super safe. We don't want our kids playing. Now, a couple weeks later, literally 3.5 weeks later, you are so hard backpedaling on this now. Now, the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 and other conferences that are going to play have figured it out. They're going to have no tailgating or marginalized tailgating, 20% of the attendees in the stadium. So now you got people in the stadium. You got games that are going to happen. You got a full schedule coming out. Your contract's in place with CBS and ESPN. And now you're like, holy crap. Now what do we do? I think Kevin Warren right now, he has big time doo-doo all over his feet. And I don't want to go in that recruiting home. How are these guys going to recruit? Oh, come play for us. We're indecisive. We flip-flop. I mean, this is like politicians.
I mean, yeah, but this is...
Masks are great. No, they're not.
But you have to understand, Ron, this is the same guy's son who's playing for Mississippi State. And so, how can you tell a bunch of kids, we're not going to play, but yet still your son is still playing college football in the SEC conference?
Back to me about the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's just a facade. It's a joke.
I think it's ridiculous that you're going to start the season on Thanksgiving. How are you going to have a season start on Thanksgiving and then qualify for a bowl game?
Yeah, how do you qualify for the playoffs?
Qualify for the playoffs and play with the rest of the schools that are going to play.
What, is this like a 5-game national TV opportunity for interviewing to the NFL for players in your conference that are stars and are going to go into the NFL? Like, what is this?
This just seems a makeup for Justin Fields, just to get him on national television, just for NFL teams to see him, the teams that are going to be in the top 5 picks. Am I right or am I wrong? I mean,
I don't know. 4 weeks ago, the coaches were pulled, and the universities were pulled, and only 2 of them wanted to stay. Now we're 4 weeks into it.
And who are those 2 teams? Or who are those 4 teams?
That was Iowa and Nebraska.
Wow.
And that was it. And then today, Yahoo Sports comes out and says Paul Christ, Wisconsin, Ryan Day, Ohio State, James Franklin, Penn State, and Scott Frost are leading the charge to get play going for the fall 2020 series. This is so stupid. It's like get your stuff on a little bit tighter. I mean, this is ridiculous, man. You killed recruiting for next year. You absolutely killed it. You can't. Agreed. You're running a conference. This is a multi-billion-dollar corporation in and of itself. You're one of the major 5 conferences. Get it on straight.
In the preseason poll, Penn State was ranked ahead of Florida. I think they were 9 and we were 10. Florida was 10, excuse me. So, I mean. So where does
Ohio State drop on November 27th?
Right.
They're 1-0. Oh, what? They're the second best team in the country? I don't think so. No.
I just
So
think-
say goodbye to the polls. Say goodbye to your chance for bowl games. You do not deserve to be in the play. What, you're going to be in the playoff? You're going to qualify for the playoff with 4 games or 5 games under your belt?
just go have a Big Ten bubble.
What is that? Yeah,
Right,
a Big Ten what? A playoff? You're going to have a
Right.
Big Ten playoff?
Ohio State versus Michigan.
What, so we can see another blowout like the last 2 years? Oh,
Yeah.
please. I think it's an absolute joke. The SEC is coming out looking shining. So is the ACC and the Big 12 and all this. I think they're going to be able to pull it off. I'm actually allowing myself to get excited about college football. Speaking about college football, guys, we are doing our big SEC East breakdown tonight. Check us out on Thursday. Our show will be the SEC West breakdown, which will be equally as interesting. In the SEC East, I'm going to get it started with the bottom dwellers and work my way up. And it's got to start in one place if I'm talking about the worst team in the SEC East, and that has to be Vandy. 1-7 last year. Non-conference losses at home to Purdue and UNLV, which is borderline inexcusable if they weren't such a smart school,
Right.
because the expectation level there is like what? I mean, you got to beat UNLV at home. You got to beat UNLV. They end up losing that. I actually said this last year, Chris, when we were talking college football. I actually like Derek Mason, but where do you start tipping the balance between he's a really good coach and he's trying, and it's Vandy, so we got to give him a slide, to you're in the SEC, you got to represent, and we're selling tickets, and you've got to be expected to compete.
Yeah, I mean, but you have to understand too. Even though they are a smart school, you still have schools such as like Duke that's still been able to be competitive.
Stanford's competitive.
Stanford. I mean, yeah. So you have these other schools, Notre Dame, who have very high academic standards, but they're still able to be competitive. So I mean, so you just can't use that as an excuse as to why you're not competitive in your conference.
And Derek Mason has been there since 2014. He's had ample opportunity. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what's realistic? Do we just take Vandy as like a free spot on the bingo board every year, and they just go out there and give it the old college try because you're trying? I mean, everybody knows they're a doormat. I want them to be competitive. They were 124th last year in offense.
Yeah.
124th.
Yeah, I mean,
They ripped a bunch of bodies out of the morgue, threw them on the football field. They were better than Vandy last year in offense. Dead people on the football field were better than Vandy in offense. What's worse than that is they were 100th in defense.
Yeah, I mean, but Vandy has generally, they used to be known for playing tough defense, just couldn't put any points on the board. So eventually defense wears
now they're
down,
known for nothing.
But now they're like both bad.
Oh, going to me about Vandy?
Yeah.
The only thing that I can
Joe, stop asking me that question.
You're going to me about Vandy.
When Chris is done, we're going to you.
All right. Well, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I want to know about Vandy.
I'm not
Yes.
even interested in Vandy.
Tell me I'm crazy. I'm not interested
No,
either, but
I'm
there's
not.
got to be some Vandy
All right.
fans out there
has
that
to
we
be
have to
some. I know.
appease.
That's why. You
It's the
said
two
last
guys
time.
wearing
I'm not interested in
Vulcan
Vandy.
ears going to Comic-Con conventions, living in their mom's basement. They've never kissed a girl, and all they know is quantum physics. Wait, did Ray just come back on the set? Raymond, I didn't know if Raymond was here, but yeah,
No.
Vandy, I don't know. Is it me? What kind of expectation should we have on them every year?
Not
Is it
much.
reasonable? Right.
Right. No, well, I mean,
Should we expect more?
I mean, they're in the SEC, right? We
Yeah.
consider them the best conference, so yeah. I mean, I would say so.
The SEC slogan is it's just bigger, it's just more important. What is it? What's that slogan?
Southeastern.
It just means more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
SEC, it just means more, except if you're in Nashville.
Right.
I look for them to be a 1 or 2 win team. Moving on to my second from the bottom, and I'm actually sketchy on this pick, but I'm going to go with Missouri. 3-5 last year in the SEC. What I love about Missouri is last year they were 14th in the nation in overall defense, so they're doing something right.
Yeah.
3-5 in the conference. I guess you got those 3 wins because of the defense, but offense was 92nd in the country. You got to be able to score more than more points than your opponent. Their top recruiting prospect is listed by ESPN, 247 Sports, and Yahoo at 141. Defensive end Travion Ford. He's a 6'4" defensive end. Number 37th in recruiting, according to 247 Sports. And when you've got Purdue, Indiana, NC State, teams like that ranked higher than you in recruiting, then you're not going to make it out of the second to last place spot on my list in the SEC East. I'm not expecting too much resistance from Missouri. I think they'll have a semi-solid team. Most of that defense is coming back. Chris, tell me I'm wrong.
No, you can't be wrong, but
I just love hearing that. What did you say? I can't be wrong.
You can't. You
Here,
can't.
we got a Big Ten. You're going Big Ten on me, Flippy.
Yeah, iffy now. You know what, Ron? I actually got South Carolina at that second to last spot. I mean,
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, seriously.
Well, I'm going to get into South Carolina in a minute, but tell me about Missouri real quick.
Wow.
Well, Missouri. I mean, again, last year, I mean, they did still rank kind of at the bottom in offense and defense in the SEC. So,
well, defensively they were awesome. They're 14th in the country. Offensively, they were 92nd.
yeah, but again, we're talking about the SEC. So when you're looking at those numbers compared to the better teams like the LSU's, the Floridas, the Georgias,
Right.
And so you're looking at those teams, they still ranked at the bottom of their conference. So yeah, I can see them in that spot. Yeah.
The only thing I got on Missouri is their running back, Larry Roundtree, who led the SEC in rushing yards last year. But to your point, Chris, about South Carolina, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people with Ryan Helinski. Ron and I were talking about him before the show, and we're pretty high on him.
I'm not high on them.
Yeah,
They're my third. They're my next team, third from the bottom. And until you hit that 50-50 mark,
We'll see.
their third from the bottom is South Carolina, and the whole reason I have them there is one man. Will Muschamp is the reason. 3-5 last year in the SEC, 95th overall in offense in the country. That is putrid. That's a double bagger. I got to put two paper bags over my television. Just listen to the audio. In case one bag breaks, I've got another bag there, so I still don't have to watch their offense. A double bagger. What they're supposed to be good at with Will Muschamp is what, Chris? Defense, right?
Right, yeah.
He's supposed to be a defensive guru. Would a defensive guru have an SEC team that ranks 95th in offense, have his defense ranked 66th overall in the country? What the actual hell is Will Muschamp doing there? He is like I talked last week about the ultimate retread coaches. He has the crown. It has diamonds in it and trash. He wears the crown of the ultimate retread coach in college football. Why he's the coach there, I still have no idea. I think they hired him just on name only. But that wouldn't even make sense because his last 2 years at Florida, he went 10-13 with no bowl appearances. He did not take Florida to a bowl game the last 2 years he was here. So why would they hire him? It's so insane. In 2016, they went 6-7, lost in the bowl game. In 2017, 9-4, decent year. In 2018, 7-6, again another bowl loss. 2019, 4-8, no bowl game. What are we holding on to here? Do we just keep telling ourselves at South Carolina, he's making Columbia great again? I don't see it.
No, he's not making Columbia great again, but Will Muschamp to me is a defensive coordinator at best.
Right. Know your lane, know your role.
There are some people who just that's their niche and they need to stick to it. I mean, the guy was great as a defensive coordinator at Texas. I mean, should have been there at Florida as defensive coordinator, not a head coach.
Did a good, okay job at Auburn.
Right.
Right. But
So,
it's
yeah.
not working out.
Nope, it's not
No,
working
the
out at
experiment
all.
is not working. They're not recruiting. The Helinski kid,
There's just
I
something
think
that-
he's
well,
got
yeah.
some talent,
Yeah, I'd
but
say so. I mean, he only played
Yeah.
5 games last year too, so I mean, it was a small sample size. So we'll see how it goes this year. But,
how
I
much
mean,
faith do you have in him? He's the head
Helinski-
coach.
Oh, and Helinski.
No,
Muschamp.
in Muschamp.
Not a lot. I don't. Sadly.
How do you have them ahead of Missouri?
Helinski? That's really it.
I don't know. I've got them third to the bottom. My hopes for them are maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 wins.
Yeah, maybe
3 or
If
4
that-
wins.
if
I'll
that.
go 4-8 like last year. That's fair.
Okay. Let's move on to my 4th team from the bottom.
Yeah.
My 4th team
Is it?
from the
Yeah.
bottom,
Yeah.
or my 4th team from the top, I guess you could say, right? Because you get 4th team from the bottom or top. Mark Stoops in his 8th year at Kentucky.
Yeah.
I think he's kept Kentucky a notch or two better than they were in the Hal Mummy years and the years before he took over. They were 8-5 last year, 3-5 in the SEC, 4th in the East, 20th overall in defense, so their defense is solid. second in the country in pass defense, only giving up 167 yards passing.
Yeah.
So I know the defense is going to be there. But when I go onto your message boards and 90% of the information on there is the recruits that you're hoping to get this year, it tells me about the talent that you have there now. That's pretty telling. Not that I want you to, or you'd be excited to do it, but just for fun, go check out the message boards for the University of Kentucky 2020 college football season. A lot of it is about the recruits that they're hoping to get, because I think they can see the writing on the wall. They're going to have a solid defense. I don't know if they can get that dynamic offense that we saw snapshots of in the last 2 years, but they weren't able to put it all the way together. I've got them fourth from the bottom or the top, whatever way you want to word it, in the SEC East.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I have Kentucky in that same spot too. Again, Mark Stoops has always been known for his defense. I'm not trying to be a homer, but I mean, he definitely had our defense humming before he went to Kentucky. And so, I actually like Kentucky in that spot.
You're taking Tennessee over Kentucky? Really? Both of you?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Wow, I'm not. I got Terry Wilson coming in hot off for injury last year.
Okay, tell me about Kentucky, though.
Terry Wilson, I'm really high on him. He was injured last year. I think the year before he was pretty solid as well. But I think he'll have a breakout year. He's a dual threat quarterback, so we'll see. I mean, that's kind of what they're looking for from. But actually, last year in the game against Florida, we almost lost that game. If it wasn't for Frank's injury and Trask coming in, we would have lost that game.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're not a bad team, and people really sleep on them. And I really like it's Mark Stoops, right? It's not,
Yeah.
Mark Stoops, yeah.
Yeah, I just think they're just a middle of the road team. They're going to give you one shocker that they're not supposed to win, and then they're going to play some directional school and lose by 2 or 3 at home.
They're a solid 500 team.
Yeah,
That's a fair
an
statement.
absolutely solid 500 team. That's a
Yes.
great way of putting
That's a
it.
good
But
way to put
that's not going to get it cut.
No.
They expect more there. They were actually building. I mean, they beat Florida for the first time 2 years ago.
Yes.
Right.
And they were building momentum. And then last year, the wheels just came off. And, they had a lackluster performance in a bowl game that about 45 people went to. I don't know. They played Virginia Tech. It was 2 games that were teams that were equally matched. But I've got them at the middle of the road. Like I said, they're going to win one that you don't expect them to win. Then they're going to blow it against some directional school. I've got them right in the middle of the pack. The third place team in the SEC will be Rocky Top, Tennessee. Last year, I don't even know what happened to them. They were so absolutely bipolar, it's mind-blowing to me. They lose at home to Georgia State in the home opener, the season opener.
Yeah.
The next week they come back, and then they lose to BYU at home in overtime. You're supposed to win those 2 games going into Chattanooga and then into conference play. Now, they blow out Chattanooga in week 3, 45-0, but losing at home to Georgia State and then BYU set the tone. And remember last year, Chris, we were talking about there was player rebellions, people not wanting to be on the team.
Right.
There was questions about Jeremy Pruitt being his leadership and whether he was going to last the rest of the season. Then they kind of pull it together. They finish up 8-5, 5-3 overall in the SEC. My main concern for Tennessee is at quarterback. Redshirt senior Jarrett Garantano. I'm not sold on this kid. He reminds me of Kellen Mond from Texas A&M, except not as good a thrower. 2,100 yards last season, 16 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, very pedestrian, nothing exciting, 100th in the country in total offense. That is not going to get it done. Now, to Jeremy Pruitt's credit, this is the 3rd season in a row that they've been successful in recruiting a 5-star recruit.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to translate this year or not, I don't know. But out of the mediocreness, so there's a bunch of teams in the middle of the conference, and then you've got Georgia and Florida at the top, and you've got Vandy down here over in the corner doing mathematics.
Right.
Out of the teams in the middle, I think that they're going to have the best season because I think they're going to build off that momentum that they had at the end of last season.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. I like what he's doing with the recruiting. I definitely want to see a surprise wide receiver that came out of Tampa, Malachi Wideman. I want to see what he can do. This guy is a stud as a freshman this year. I mean, you have a guy that has like a 46-inch vertical. The guy, he's just a pure athlete. I definitely want to see what he can do on the field for Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, his defensive wise, I mean, the guy's a genius when it comes down to playing defense and defensive schemes. So I actually think Tennessee is in a good spot at number 3.
I'm just curious to see what Eric Gray will do. I mean, last year he averaged 5.3 yards per carry. I mean, he only had 4 touchdowns, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see what that backfield can do.
Yeah,
with him leading the pack. The last running back I know of that was at Tennessee that was relevant was Alvin Kamara, who's actually holding out for the Saints right now.
No, I think you're right. I think the whole thing for Tennessee, it's got to start with their offensive line and establishing a running game because you're not going to get it done at quarterback, I don't think. The number one guy on their depth chart right now is Ty Chandler. He went for 655 yards and 3 touchdowns. Between their 2 starters last year that are returning right now, you had about 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. That offensive line has got to step up and perform. I think for Rocky Top to have any success this year, it starts on the offensive line and being able to run the ball to set up the pass, not starting with the pass. You got a guy there who's a senior who's started the last 2 years who has proven, I think, that he's got questionable leadership abilities, not a very strong arm, and I don't want to really go into how much talent they've had at wide receiver or not. I want to talk about how they're going to fix it this year. I think it starts with the offensive line. They've got to get the running game started. This schedule, I think, opens up for them fairly easily. They've got September 26th at South Carolina. If you get that win, you get a little momentum going. Then October 3rd, you got Missouri coming to Rocky Top. That's a very winnable game. And then October 17th, you got Kentucky. So I think the schedule, the first 4 weeks, they got Georgia in there, I think, the 3rd week. But they could be looking at 3-1. They could be looking at 2-0 going into the Georgia game. I'm not saying they're going to beat Georgia,
Right.
but you could have some momentum, and anything can happen in college football. You could lose your home opener to Georgia State and BYU. They did. So I've got Tennessee coming in 3rd. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Tennessee. I think that, where do you got them, Joe?
I got Tennessee at 4. I'm going
At
to
4,
Kentucky
and
at
you
3.
got them at 3.
I have him at 3.
Well,
And I've got
they
them
went
at
8-5 last year, right?
Yeah.
So I mean with the bowl game with the extra wins. I mean that's tough honestly to put them at 3, but I mean we'll see honestly how it goes. It could go either way.
Last year was bipolar. They started out Jekyll. They turned into a beautiful swan by the end of the season. That's what I'm going on. My pick to finish number 2 in the SEC East is the Georgia Bulldogs. And I know Twitter is I'm going to hear from the Georgia fans because in my little Twittersphere circle, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
I've got a bunch of Georgia fans in there, but I've got some really good reasons why I'm picking them number 2. It's not because they're bad. I just think that Florida is going to be better this year,
Yeah.
and I think that Georgia lost a lot. I'm going to start with Georgia by saying this. You have one of the top 5 best coaches in college football. I believe in Kirby Smart. He's shown that he can win big games. He's shown that he can recruit. He has a lockdown defense. Number 3 best overall defense in college football last year. That's something to hang your hat on. What I'm concerned about is all the losses that Georgia had as far as people leaving and going to the draft. Andrew Thomas on the offensive line, gone. Isaiah Wilson, gone. Solomon Kindley, offensive guard, gone. Quarterback, Jake Fromm, gone. Okay, so you add Jamie Newman. Maybe that's addition by subtraction. I think it is. Running back, DeAndre Swift, gone. Linebacker, Tate Crowder, awesome in the middle for you. The quarterback of the defense there, gone. Tight end, Charlie Warner, gone. That is a lot to lose for one team. And if anybody could overcome that much, I think it's Georgia and I think it's Kirby Smart. The big question, and Georgia fans just have to self-check yourself, how much are you falling in love with Jamie Newman? How many of your chips are you willing to push into the middle of the table on the Wake Forest transfer who's going to start for you this year? 2,900 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, really good numbers. He's more mobile than Jake Fromm. I'll give you that. But he played in a Wake Forest down ACC last year. He's going to have a new offensive coordinator. He's going to have a whole bunch of new people on the offensive line. He's going to have a new running back. Everything about it's going to be new, not only for him, but for the whole offense that ranked 66th in the country last year. What I do like about it is sophomore phenom wide receiver George Pickens. I think this kid is electric, and him and Newman can make some magic happen. They can keep it close and be very, very, very competitive. But again, you have an absolutely monster schedule the first 5 weeks of the season. You've got Florida, you've got Alabama, you've got Auburn. That is a gauntlet I don't want my worst friend to have to go through. So if you can make it through that, hands off to you. We talked about their running back situation with Zamir White. Kenny McIntosh and James Cook will get limited playing time, I think, but White will be the starter there. Third best defense. Most of those guys are coming back. We talk about the loss to Crowder. I still think they're a top 10 team. I still think that Kirby is able to, make chicken soup with water. And this year, I just happen to think that everything is aligning for Florida. It's too much of a loss for Georgia. I've got Georgia at number 2 in the East.
Yeah, I have Georgia number 2 in the East as well. For a lot of the reasons that you said. What I like about Jamie Newman is he's able to actually push the ball down the field with his arm. He has a pretty strong arm. I mean, he has that escapability factor that goes for him as well. But I actually want to see if Georgia can actually kind of favor that offense to being able to get him in some nice RPOs, some actually option plays that actually spread the defense out. And if they're able to do that, I mean, I believe Georgia offensively would be able to be a better squad this year.
Chris, where do you got him? Where do you got him in the East?
I got number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has him at number 2 as well as I have him at number 2. But there's one thing I do want to bring up. I did get Riley Ridley confused. It was Dominic Blaylock who did not
torn
opt out.
ACL.
Yeah, he got
second
hurt.
torn ACL
So
for him in
at
less
home,
than a
I'm
year.
not crazy. Riley Ridley's playing for the Chicago Bears now. So don't think I'm crazy. I know my stuff. I got it fact checked.
No, that's a huge log. Dominic Blaylock, second torn
Yes.
ACL in less than a year. He's gone for the 2020
And you brought
season.
that up last week on the show when he tore his both ACLs, right?
Right.
Yeah, he
His
tore
second
one in the
one.
SEC championship game, and he tore his other one earlier last week.
But I do think Georgia's a good number 2. It's a solid. I mean, it could go either way with them or Florida. But also at the same time, they've just been a hard-nosed running team for the past couple of years with Chubb, Holyfield, Swift. Now we're moving on to Zamir White. So it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Yeah, and Todd Gurley before that.
Todd Gurley before that, yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how well they do without Swift.
I mean, it all comes down to November 7th in Jacksonville. I mean, that's the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
How they do November 7th in Jacksonville against Florida is going to set the tone for who wins the SEC East, which leads me to my number 1 team in the SEC, and I can say it with a good amount of confidence. I am really high on Florida this year. I've got a lot of reasons for it. Dan Mullen in his first season goes 10-3. Last year, 11-2, 6-2 in the SEC. They lost a tough game to Georgia. I'll give you guys credit for that. They also lost a tough game at LSU at night that they were in the whole game. Yeah. Nobody stayed close to LSU last year except Florida in LSU. That tells you the bones of the team that Florida has this year coming back. What I really love is their wide receivers and their quarterback position. Kadarius Toney at wide receiver. Trayvon Grimes, he's 6'5". He runs a 4.4 40. He's 215. He can go up and get the ball, stretch the field. I love that. Tight end Kyle Pitts. I look for him to have a big season. Kyle Trask coming back, 3,000 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. I love that. And he didn't even play the whole season. I think on offense they're going to be set. They have tons of talent. Mullen has recruited like no other, and I think that they are set. Let's talk about the defense. They've got to replace that defensive line. I think that's going to be huge. They lost 2 monster guys to the draft. Another question I have for them is at running back. They lose LaMichael Pirine. Who is going to step up and take the reins, be the number 1 go-to guy for Florida out of that backfield? How well did they rebuild the defensive line? They lost CeCe Jefferson. Also, I think they're going to have one of the best secondaries in the country, not just in the SEC. I look for them to be the number 1 team. I think they're going to get past Georgia. And here's another thing I love. One of the toughest, they have a really, really, really good schedule. I mean, I love this schedule. They've got what you could consider the toughest games they've got are at Texas A&M, highly winnable game. Right. Highly winnable game. Then you've got LSU coming to Gainesville after they just lost Jamar Chase, their number 1 wide receiver, and all that talent from last year. Plus, they've got to play in the swamp. And then you got a neutral site game against Georgia, who's lost so much on the offensive side last year, offensive side of the ball. I think the stars are aligning. This is the year Florida takes the SEC East, and I'm not saying it because I'm a graduate. I'm not saying it because my kids are named Riddell, Jaquez, and Aubrey Hill Spurrier. I'm saying it because everything on paper and on the field, the heart, the returning talent, the coaching, the recruiting, the schedule, everything lines up. I've got Florida winning the SEC East, Chris.
Yes, as hard as it is for me to actually, go with the Gators. I mean, but
You're an FSU alum.
Yeah.
But this is gonna be beautiful to hear.
I'm going to give him props this year. I mean, Dan Mullen has done an excellent job since returning to Florida. He's actually built that team up. I actually like the depth they have.
Monster job recruiting.
Just depth, period, on both sides of the ball, especially at the quarterback. I mean, because you have Kyle Trask, but he also gives you another dynamic with Emory Jones back there as well, who's able to run the ball, and he's a pretty decent passer with a strong arm.
Right.
So I actually like what he's doing there. I actually want to see what he does with the running back area. But as far as wide receivers go, I mean, they have some of the best in the nation with Kadarius Toney. With Trayvon Grimes, and so I mean, I actually, I think they are in position to actually put up a battle for the SEC championship this year. To be honest,
yeah, I completely agree with both your guys' points. I'm really, really curious to see how Trask will do this year. He went for 25 touchdowns and 7 interceptions last year. He did have an okay bowl game last year against Virginia, but I mean, it will be interesting to see how well he does. And I'm really, really interested to see how Malik Davis will do coming back from that foot injury, because he's their number one running back, I think, on the depth chart right now, actually. So it'd be curious to see how he will do.
How about their secondary and their defense?
Trey Dean was at corner last year. He moved to safety. And we still have Marco Wilson, who came back, who we actually ran into at the stadium on Saturday. Right?
Yep, super cool guy.
Pretty cool guy, so it was awesome.
I am super, super high on Florida. It's not because I'm an alum. I think everything is there. We want to know what you hear. You can reach us here at thefirstraundrd@gmail.com. Get a hold of us. Let us know your questions and comments about who you've got winning the SEC East. And then Thursday night, we're going to be breaking down the SEC West. Huge, huge college football week. I'm so excited. Next week, it's going to start feeling even more real. This weekend, I'm going to get a taste of some real games. But then next week, we've got Clemson, we've got Notre Dame, we've got Texas, we've got Oklahoma jumping into the mix. So I am so ready for that. Leaving college football for a second, and I wanted to get into the NBA just for a second and basketball in general and talk about basketball legend. And like I said at the top of the show, more importantly, a great human being in John Thompson, former head coach of Georgetown, took them literally from the cellar and made them a national power, both in wins, national championship, over 20 appearances, I believe, in the NCAA
tournament.
Yeah, in the tournament. I was going to say playoffs. Passed away today at age 78. And I don't know what's going on in basketball. Cliff Robinson, an 18-year vet in the NBA, played at UConn. Passed away over the weekend. He was 53. Lute Olson, former head coach of the Arizona Wildcats, took them to their only national championship as the head coach. He passed away over the weekend. But to me, reading some of the stuff that was being put out on the internet today by Allen Iverson and former players, so many people talked about John Thompson being a superior human being and not even getting into the accolades that he had on the court. It stinks when a guy like this goes and passes, because we need, more than any other time in our history maybe, men of character, and he was one of them. And after 78 years of being on this planet, he's no longer with us.
Yeah, Ron, it's a good thing. It's really sad, honestly, but it's just a tough thing, to think about it. But also at the same time, he did a lot of good things off the court as well. He was an advocate for black athletes to obtain their college degrees while he was there. And another thing too was he was a big part in social injustice actually off the court. So he was a big advocate. Chris, am I right? After reading all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, one of the greatest stories that I can recall about John Thompson was the actual recruitment of Allen Iverson. I mean, if you know anything about Allen Iverson in the state of Virginia, this guy was, I mean, a great athlete, not only in basketball, but football as well. And, the fact that, as a teenager, Allen Iverson did have some run-ins the fact that John Thompson was able to take a guy like Allen Iverson, not only, get him into school, but actually get him to focus, play basketball at a high degree, and not only playing basketball at a high degree, but at an institution like Georgetown where, the academics is strenuous. You have to be on point with your grades. So, the fact that he's able to take a guy like Allen Iverson, who had some trouble, and actually get him to be one of the top players in the NBA, that to me, that says a lot about who he is as a man.
I can't say any more about the guy. He had the highest possible character. He was a great representation for not only for basketball in general, but somebody that recruiting parents that are getting their kids recruited to Georgetown could look up to. I think it's a monster loss, and I'm sad to see him go. Having said that, Chris, what else is going on in the world of sports?
Well, in the world of sports, we seem to have a lot of stuff going on now. In regards to, some of the stuff that Joe was talking about with social injustice. One of the stories that actually popped out to me was you now have NFL players that actually say they're going to actually sit out a game. And one of the players that actually spoke up and said something was Saquon Barkley from the from the New York Giants. Saquon, he basically came out and basically voiced the opinions that everyone in the NFL stated that, you have players that are tired of seeing what's going on, and they're thinking about sitting out a game, just to for social justice. And it's definitely something that's going to continue to impact sports in general.
A lot of stuff going on. Hopefully the show was entertaining to you, but that music can mean only one thing. It's time to thank our support staff. The man on the board, the incredible Zach, doing an awesome job as he always does.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
We got the Lightning and the Bruins. I'm rooting against the Bruins tonight. We're going to go watch that game and see who finishes up. I got a lot of money on the Lightning. I'm not supposed to say that. My two co-hosts, Joe Monroe to my right, and
Yes.
Chris. Chris, you're always stable. You always do a great job. Chris, I really appreciate it. I just want you to know that I really appreciate you. El Presidente, Chet 40 for all of us here at the first round. Be right back here Thursday night. We will be breaking down everything going on in the SEC East, our breakdowns, our picks, talking about everything else, or the SEC West. We're going to talk about everything going on in the world of sports. Until Thursday night, hit the subscription button. Tell your friends about the first round. Help grow us to epic proportions. Until then, take care, everybody.